Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another edition of the Hockey Writers Podcast season preview shows. And we are doing the Vancouver Canucks, which I've been looking forward to because I cover the Canucks. Bringing in Adam Kierszenblat, who's my colleague on the Canucks writing team, also writes for the Seattle Kraken, but he's going to talk Canucks on this one. Thanks, Adam, for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and also, of course, joined in by Kyle Knopp, who's always here with these in preview shows. So let's get started with the Vancouver Canucks this year and start with the new additions on the forward group. They had 4 new additions on free agency, didn't make any big trades. But let's start with one guy went over from the Toronto Maple Leafs, Ilya Mikheyev, who I was really surprised the Canucks signed him. A lot of people were iffy on the contract, but Adam, what do you think about Mikheyev joining the Canucks?
Well, I mean, with Ilya Mikheyev, it's all about the penalty kill. I know that he scored 21 goals last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but based off of his career and even going back to Russia, that's a little bit of an anomaly. Now, that could have been because of his contract year. We see that across the board where generally players in their contract year have career years. But this guy, the general consensus is that he's one of the fastest, if not the fastest player without the puck in the NHL. That's been mentioned multiple times by people across the industry. The Canucks had basically a historically bad power play the entire season, or penalty kill the entire season until Bruce Boudreau got there. So Boudreau, we saw it with, whether it was Pettersson or Hughes being put on the penalty kill. He likes fast guys. He likes guys that can create chances on the penalty kill, and Mikheyev fits that perfectly. Now, we'll see where he fits in the, top 9. That's what we'll call it. But this guy, if he contributes 30 to 40 points, I think that's a massive win. It's a little bit of an overpayment, but when you're missing guys who can play the penalty kill to his level, you got to overpay and you got to fix something. And if that's what it took, then that was a good move in the end.
Well, I loved the signing. I didn't expect the Canucks. There wasn't much talk that the Canucks were even targeting him in free agency, at least not what I saw. So, I mean, getting him, like you said, the penalty kill is going to be massive. And that penalty kill was so bad. I mean, it was so tough to watch. And, another team gets on the power play, you're like, yeah, they're going to score. And most of the time they did. So it's like Mikheyev's going to add a lot of that. And I think he will score 20 goals again, wherever he gets to fit in. He's going to be really good for the team. And not just in this, 5-on-5, but like you say, the penalty kill, he's going to be on the power play, probably the second unit power play too. So yeah, big addition, I think, for the Canucks for sure. Let's move to another Russian.
Before we move on, I do want to point out that back before the preseason or before the signing happened, I did say that he should have been a target of the Vancouver Canucks. So
all right, there you go.
Just a little bit of
karma out there, yeah.
You did.
A little bit of self-inflation there.
Free agency targets, yes. I remember that. Yeah, so he's going to be really good for the team, I think.
Yeah.
Let's move to another Russian though, and this is a guy the Canucks signed officially on free agency start, but they had signed him about a month beforehand. This is Andrei Kuzmenko, probably the biggest European free agent on the market, and the Canucks snagged him. They usually don't get these guys. They always kind of miss out. What do you think about Andrei Kuzmenko, and will he have a big impact on the Canucks this year?
Well, you look at Andrei Kuzmenko through his career, this is a guy who in the KHL was known for his scoring. So he had a career year, just like Mikheyev. He had 53 points last year. But this is a guy who can get you around 20 goals. But let's also remember that this is the KHL. Yeah. It's a little bit different in the NHL. So I think with Kuzmenko, you're looking at second unit power play. I don't think he ends up on the first unit unless he pulls off like a Kaprizov and just absolutely lights up the league, which we don't know. Like that's the big thing. We don't know what's really going to happen, but I think that he is going to make he's going to make the Canucks better. He's an offensively driven player who should hit around that 40-point range this year. And if he gets 15 goals, I think that's a win in year one. The big question is, with the signing next year. because he did sign a 1-year deal, and how we are to understand it is that the Canucks offered him that they will re-sign him. So we don't know if that contract has already been written up, or if we're waiting for the season and then we'll see what his contract comes out. But this could be a good signing. You look at it, like if he's 40 points and he's playing in your top 9, I think that's a pretty big step up. Considering the Canucks last year, they only had 6 players over 40 points last year. And one of them was a defenseman. So you have 2 wingers, because we won't call Pettersson or Miller a winger, over 40 points. So any offense is wanted at this point. And if it doesn't come from the core players, that's even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Kuzmenko, I wrote an article. It's funny because I wrote an article about 2 hours before they actually signed him, saying they should sign him. And that was so when it happened, it was like it was good. Yeah, it was all a big mess, but I still got views on it. Thing is, Kuzmenko's, I think he's going to be a really good addition to the Canucks. Yeah. And the thing is, he's not the fastest guy, so don't anticipate he's going to be wearing number 96, which used to be Pavel Bure's number way back when he wore that for a bit. He's not going to be Pavel Bure. But I think he's going to add a lot around the net because he's really good in front of the net, at least in the KHL. I actually compare him to Toffoli around the net. So, but again, we don't know until he does something in the NHL, like you said. So we'll see on what he can do. All right, let's go to a guy that's, he's a star in the WHL and wasn't Boston Bruins a big draft pick way back when, Curtis Lazar. And coming back home as well, what do you think about Lazar's addition to the team in probably the 4th line?
I love Lazar's addition to the team. He's a cheap signing at $1 million. Local kid, that when local kids usually come home, they play a little bit better in general. And it's going to be hard for him to play worse than Jason Dickinson or Juho Lammikko. Curtis Lazar is a 4th liner who, even though he's not the biggest guy, is going to throw hits. He'll drop the gloves if needed. He'll play on the penalty kill, and he'll contribute 20 points a season. That is the perfect 4th liner. He's also right-handed, which is so important because the Canucks are, I think they were last year that all 4 of their centers for a majority of the year were left-handed.
Yeah.
I think even 5, all of their centers were left-handed basically. So the Canucks need right-handed shots as well. Lazar fills that need. I've liked him ever since he played in junior with Edmonton. This is a guy who was rushed into the NHL. Yeah. But remember, he still played. He still had a pretty successful NHL career. This is a guy who's played 404 games over the last 9 seasons. Yeah. He isn't a guy that gets sent down to the minors. And that's usually a good thing. I know he doesn't play every game. In every year he hasn't played every game, but he's good enough to stick on the roster, and he's going to make he's going to make his presence felt on the 4th line for sure here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I really like this pickup for Vancouver because of the fact that he is not afraid to throw his body around in every situation.
Yeah.
It seems like Vancouver's kind of lacked that the last couple seasons, even when they made the playoffs. Was it 3 years ago now? And they had that kind of run with Demko. Is that 2 years ago now? Anyway,
the bubble playoffs. So
the bubble playoffs. That's right. Yeah. So and even then, it seemed like they didn't have that grit or that sandpaper that really gets teams deep into playoff runs. And I think Lazar can be that 4th line sandpaper.
Yeah, and he hits, which is like you say, physicality is going to be big with him. So I like the signing too. I actually like all the signings the Canucks did. Let's add to the last
we
guy.
We would hear all about it. So
go. We'll just read the article I wrote right after all the free agency stuff. Finally, this is another guy that's going to add grit to the lineup, and I'm assuming, Adam, I know you're pretty big on this guy of being in the lineup. A lot of people are not so sure, but Dakota Joshua comes over from the St. Louis Blues. Didn't play a lot there. He played in the minors most of the time. What do you think about his addition to the Canucks?
Well, another big guy, 6'2", 198 pounds is what he's listed at right now. But he was mentioned by name from Patrick Allvin. You know, when they were talking about Mikheyev and Lazar and Kuzmenko, he made sure to say, I really like this Joshua kid. Like, you know, they made a point of going out and signing him. I know it was in the AHL, but he had 20 points in 35 games with Springfield last year. And then he went on a little bit of a tear with 15 points in 18 games in the playoffs. Also had 58 penalty minutes. So you know this guy gets involved in the play. I think that he's going to be a great addition to the fourth line, because what do we need from the fourth line? It's speed. Why did Tyler Mott become such a, you know, fan favorite in Vancouver? It's because even though he was smaller, he had the speed.
Yeah.
He played physical and he played hard every shift. Like that is what Dakota Joshua is going to do. He is not one of these players that has been in the NHL for a long time and is just going to skate around because he knows that he's earned his contract a la Louis Eriksson. You know, this is a guy who's going to fight every day to stay in the lineup.
Yeah.
So it's a good gamble to put him into the lineup. Only $825,000 is his cap hit going into next year. Can keep him as a 13th forward, but I think that this is a great signing for Vancouver. We'll see what ends up happening, but with that fourth line, but this is kind of the exact player that you want to play on your fourth line.
Yeah, 100%.
This is the type of signing that even if it doesn't work out, it's very little risk to the team. And, you know, you can place them down in the AHL if you need to, but to have another big body, like you said, that's willing to mix it up, willing to get in the play, willing to really fight for every inch of ice, I think that's huge, especially on a fourth line.
Yep.
All right, well, let's talk about someone who has recently signed that I think everyone has been wondering what's going to happen to. Obviously, JT Miller I'm talking about now. So now that he is re-signed, did the Canucks focus on signing Bo Horvat before the season starts? Or does Horvat end up getting traded, as some people on Twitter are suggesting? What are your thoughts, Adam?
Well, before we go into the Bo Horvat traded, you know, universe,
I opened that window for you, so go ahead.
how many captains who just have come off career years get traded? Like, I can't think of any. You know, this is a guy who was flirting with like 40 goals last year.
Yeah.
So I think that Bo Horvat, Bo Horvat situation is going to be very interesting to watch during training camp. I think that the goal was to get him signed during the off season.
Yeah.
This JT Miller thing kind of threw a whole wrench into everything, but you're looking at about $14 million the Canucks have to spend next year. Now, Bo Horvat is probably going to take up half of that.
Yeah.
The reports out of Vancouver are around $7 million after what JT Miller got. But if you're Vancouver, you sign this guy.
Yeah.
This guy is your shutdown center for the next, decade, potentially.
Yeah.
Like, this guy has been a trooper since he got here. He has been on bad team after bad team after bad team, and he has never given up. He kind of embodies what like the Sedins were, you know, guys that love, by all accounts, love playing here, put it on the light every night, and lead by example.
Yeah.
You know, there were reports that there was feud between JT Miller and Bo Horvat as well. I don't really believe in that argument, but I think that that they would work, that they're going to work very well together for the next 7-8 years, as long as they keep Miller here. And as Matthew wrote in his article, you know, if you keep Horvat, you got probably one of the most dynamic 1-2-3 centers in the league.
Yeah.
So, and also the Canucks, like, why would you get one other thing about it? Why would you get rid of one of the best face-off guys in the league?
Yeah.
Like, face-offs win. I know people always, defense wins championship, goals win championships. No, face-offs win championships. That's how you win, is you control the puck on the face-off. It allows you to either create an offensive chance or get the puck out right away.
Yeah.
Bo Horvat's one of the best in the league to do it. It makes no sense for them to piss him off, not re-sign him before the season, or even just let him walk in free agency.
It's funny you mentioned the face-off thing, because on the grind line, especially last year around the trade deadline, our Detroit Red Wing team, we're talking about guys like Darren Helm and Sam Gagner, who were going to get dealt at the trade deadline. And usually like, well, why would teams care about these guys? Yeah. And not only do they bring the veteran presence, Helm kills penalties, but they both win faceoffs and are pretty good at winning faceoffs. Yeah. And like you said, that's an important tool to have in your arsenal, especially late in a game. Yeah.
57%, I believe, was Horvat's faceoff percent.
I've always been a huge fan of Darren Helm ever since I watched him in the Memorial Cup back in 2007 with Medicine Hat. Like he's one of those players that is just good for a long time and people don't realize it. Like he was one of, it's just, he does everything.
Yeah.
Like there's no better way to, there's no, like, you don't need to go into like great detail to describe Darren Helm besides he's a good hockey player who does everything good.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't do anything great, but he does it like at the good level where you can't really complain about his play.
Right.
Yeah. No, for sure. And center faceoffs are massive. And, when Horvat was hurt for quite a while. When Miller wasn't with the Canucks, and no one could win faceoffs. So it's like he was the one that took every draw. So
can't control the play.
He still kind of takes every draw.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I don't think they should trade him. I don't think they should entertain trading him. I've said in the past he's a core player, and I always get heat on Twitter for that. How is he a core player? Because he's a core player. Like if you understand what core players mean, but yeah. We mentioned it, the top 9, and the fact that a top 9, and Boudreau's mentioned this in his media availability and whenever he's talked to the media, at least, that Canucks have 3 strong centermen. Mm-hmm. So that suggests he's going to be using Pettersson, Horvat, and Miller as centermen this year. And, Miller and Pettersson played on the same line in the past, and Miller would take the draw. Pettersson would then shift back to center, and Miller would play the wing. Do you see them playing on their own lines this year?
I think that they're all gonna center a line, because you look at the wingers. So how the Canucks are situated is that you can either play all 3 down the middle, or you have Jason Dickinson in the lineup.
Yeah.
So I think that answers your question. I would rather have guys like Podkolzin on the wing, Podkolzin, Garland playing in like top 6 positions, Kuzmenko, Mikheyev rather than having Dickinson play third line center because you want to load up a top line.
Yeah.
Now I think that, we're going to see situations where, like, if the Canucks are down late, you're probably going to see a situation where you have Horvat, Miller, Pettersson, and Boeser, along with Hughes out there in a situation. But outside of that, like the majority of time, I see them playing 1, 2, 3. Now the order doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can adjust. Like if you're playing a certain team and Horvat is playing better, you can elevate him to, that 18-minute even strength time. If Pettersson's playing better, you can elevate him. If Miller's playing better, like you're in a situation where you don't have lines, you just have a top 9.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the dream that you'd want. You don't want a number 1 line that only produces offense. Look at Colorado. Colorado was able to spread out, McKinnon, Rantanen, Burakovsky, Kadri, Landeskog, and look what they won a Stanley Cup. You don't want to load up your front line. So if you can have that center depth and you can surround them with quality players and make that strong top 9, that's the ideal goal.
Yeah. Horvat's not the third line center.
No, he's one of 3 top 9 centers.
Yes. So, you bring up these 3 players playing without each other. So that immediately gives them less support on their wings because they're not playing with other high caliber players like, Horvat and Pettersson together, or Pettersson and Miller, Horvat, whatever. So with them on separate lines, do Horvat and Pettersson hit 30 goals again? And can Miller creep around 100 points, or do they all kind of regress back to the mean?
Miller, I don't know if he's going to hit 100 points. But one thing I do know is that power play is going to be a lot better. So Horvat, Pettersson, and Miller, it's going to be definitely in the 30 goal club. Like that's just based off of the power play. Even strength, we'll see how this whole situation works. But, you know, they could end up with multiple 30-point guys or 30 goal guys like Brock Boeser. I know that's a guy who we'll talk about later. That's a guy who could hit 30 goals. And then you're looking at guys who can hit like around that 25 mark, that 20 to 25 mark. Like Mikheyev could be in that area. Kuzmenko could be in that area. Tanner Pearson, when he's playing with Bo Horvat, it looks like he's back to when he was playing with the LA Kings years ago. We don't know what Podkolzin can do yet.
Yeah.
Connor Garland is going to have a strong year if he's with the Canucks and not traded.
Yeah.
So this is a team that right now is set up to outscore their problems and hope that Demko holds down the fort.
That's it right there.
Matthew looks at the WHL, and that was what, if you look at how like the Kamloops Blazers last year, it's the same model. You know, you get these guys who can get a lot of points, a lot of goals, and you hope that you can outscore your problems because you have a star in net. So, you know, we'll see if it works. It's all up to Demko, but based off of the power play, there shouldn't be any issue with these players hitting 30 and, you know, maybe even like pushing the 40 mark, a couple of them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, just looking at this potential power play lineup on paper, I mean, holy cow, does it look dangerous. I mean, if they go four forwards and one defender, or even if they go 3 and 2, like they have so many weapons that it's going to be, hopefully they're a shoot first power play. Cause if not, it's just going to be a lot of pretty passing, but no finishing. So,
well, we've had pretty passing and no shots for the last 20 years here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Somehow the Sedins put up multiple 100-point seasons. So
ever since Michael Samuelsson left, right? Because he's pretty much the only one that would shoot first on the power play.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the turning point of the 2011 Stanley Cup playoffs, Michael Samuelsson getting hurt.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. It seems like Jason King is going to still run the power play. I'm not very happy about that, but it just power play is
speaking of Michael
frustrating.
Samuelsson, you have him in the Canuck organization.
There you
now.
go. He should just run the power play now.
That's true.
But yeah. Home. All right. This is a quick one. You mentioned Boeser already. Do you think he hits 30 this year? He's gotten close. He won away a few years ago, but does he hit 30 this year?
If he is healthy, he hits 30.
Yeah.
Very simple. You know, he signed the contract. He doesn't, we know about the off ice stuff that happened with his father passing away and being sick the entire year. So that did play a factor. You know, he admitted that played a factor into last year, but now that he doesn't have to worry about trade speculation.
Yes.
The hope is that he can come back and be that dynamic, you know, 30. He was on pace for 30 goals.
Yeah.
Multiple times before injury or the year shut down. It all depends on who he plays with and if he gets that first power play unit time. Because we know that for some reason, the Canucks like to put Tanner Pearson on the first power play or Alex Chason, and it doesn't make any sense because they got Bo Horvat in front of the net, just sniping one-timers. So just keep Boeser on the power play, put him on his strong side flank, and just like, it's simple. Keep it simple. He should get 30.
Yeah, don't get me started on the power play of how they never seem to want to use Pettersson and Boeser as their shooters, which are like great one-timers on both sides of the ice. They never use them that way.
Yeah, why use Boeser on
Pettersson or like you say, Tanner Pearson now is always. I'm like, what the heck is happening? But
why use Boeser on your strong hand when you can use JT Miller on his off wing, right?
Like,
that makes so much sense, though, right? All right. Well, I want to ask you about one of your rookies from this past season. Vasily Podkolzin had a very impressive season, and I want to get your thoughts on expectations for a sophomore campaign.
Well, I think Vasily Podkolzin is going to take a step up. I think he is a candidate for that second power play. But it depends. Like, where's Bruce going to put him? Is he going to put him on the fourth line? Because that's not where he would do. That's not where he's going to develop the best.
Right.
For me, Podkolzin fits best alongside JT Miller.
Yes.
So if you have a situation where it's like Miller, Podkolzin, and Garland, that would be an ideal kind of top 9 line, in my opinion. You can also put him with Pettersson, like that works as well. If you put Mikheyev, Pettersson, and Podkolzin together, that works. I think that also having other Russian players in the lineup with him is going to help him.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is a kid who just came over from Russia. Like last year. So he didn't really have that integration. He didn't really have that player that he could talk to. I remember meeting him when the draft was in Vancouver. He couldn't really speak English, and that was only, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So but like he's a guy who loves playing in Vancouver. Like you can tell that he's happy here. And if we see, in that 30 to 40 point range, I think that's a huge hit for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm not expecting him to go full, 70, 80 point domination. But if you can get him some confidence and play him in that, and he gets that 30 to 40 points, I think that will go a long way into, future. And then we'll also see, Podkolzin is one of those players that played on the penalty kill in Russia. So do you put him on the penalty kill like you did with Pettersson, or do you wait another year? Yeah. Like I'd love to see Pettersson and Podkolzin work a penalty kill together. I don't know if that's going to happen because that's a little bit of inexperience. Maybe you put him with like JT Miller or Curtis Lazar. Yeah. But I'd love to see, even if it's one shift per game on the penalty kill, it's only like 30 seconds. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. Well, I made a bold prediction in one of my article that said that he's going to hit 30 goals. Maybe that's a little over the top, but it's bold. So that's why I said it. But I really think if he plays with Miller, he's going to hit 20 for sure. And Miller really loves him. I know how many times he's come out and said about his potential that he really sees a lot in this kid. So, Miller, I'd say they're pretty similar players too. And, they're both big guys. They're both pretty skilled. They're decently, they can play both roles, being physical and that finesse game. So I'm excited to see if Podkolzin can turn that corner and be, like you say, he scored 14 goals last year. It's not like he had a bad season. So hitting 20 is definitely on the table. So we'll see what happens with Podkolzin, because I'm really excited to see how much he steps forward this year. Well, let's talk about a guy that had a tough season last year. It seemed like he was a bit of a favorite of Travis Green, and then Bruce Boudreau came. So Nils Hoglander had didn't seem like he kind of got into the doghouse with Bruce Boudreau. Criticized his defensive game, and Hoglander I thought was pretty good defensively, but I'm maybe in the minority. What do you think about Hoglander? Does he gain the trust of Boudreau this year, or is he going to be ultimately trade bait on this pretty log-jammed forward group?
So I think that the way the top 9 shapes up, like, let's be real, Tanner Pearson is not playing on the fourth line. As much as people want it to happen, Tanner Pearson is going to play next to Bo Horvat. End of discussion. Like, unless he gets traded, that's what's happening. Like, we've watched him long enough that if people don't realize by now that he's going to be playing with Bo Horvat, like, you haven't been paying attention. Yeah. So there's no place for Hoglander in the top 9, which means that the best option is actually the AHL. You can't put Hoglander on your fourth line. He doesn't play that game. He can't play 8 minutes a game. I'd rather see him in the AHL playing 20 minutes a game, racking up the confidence. And then, if you trade a guy like Garland or Tanner Pearson, like closer to the deadline, then you can bring him up. Yeah. Like he doesn't. Yeah. I don't understand why people keep saying Hoglander should play on the fourth line. There's nothing in his game that indicates that he should be playing on the fourth line. Yeah. He had some chemistry with Horvat and Tanner Pearson, but what we have to remember is that they were playing a limited number of teams with limited amount of travel. So, that played a factor. We saw what happened when, the competition pool got expanded and he had to play all 31 teams in an 82 game season. Now he did get hurt, which did play a factor near in his whole season, but he didn't look ready. He didn't look ready for the sophomore season. So unless he comes out and just blows everybody away in training camp, this is a guy that you can send to the AHL with no problem. You can groom him down there, and then if you make a trade closer to the deadline, you can bring him up. If he goes out and he scores 30 points in his first 20 games, maybe that makes a Connor Garland or a Tanner Pearson trade easier to digest from the Canucks perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of already brought up a few, what ifs this guy gets traded, what if that guy, and Matt definitely said it best. Vancouver has a log jam of forwards right now. So how are the Canucks, in your opinion, Adam, going to free up the cap space and clear up that log jam?
Well, I think that the way that you do it is you send Hoglander down to the minors. I think that is one way to do it. And you run with a fourth line of Lockwood, Joshua, and Curtis Lazar. Now you have the situation with Dickinson where it's either you keep him as a 13th forward or you pay an asset to get rid of him. I'm not a huge fan of paying an asset to get rid of players, but at this point, if somebody says a third and Dickinson for future considerations, which has been the hot player this offseason, that might not be a bad deal. I think that they go into the season as they are right now with Garland and Pearson, but those are two names to watch as the season goes on. As we know, Jim Rutherford has traded Pearson before.
Yeah.
So that there's some history there. Connor Garland, there seems to be some weird situation where the Canucks, his name always comes up in trade deadline. I know that last year they were talking about Boston potentially being interested in him. I know he's from the area, so that would have been interesting to watch. But we'll see. I don't see them trading Boeser because they just gave him a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
Horvat, Pettersson, and Miller are locked in. You're not going to trade Kuzmenko or Mikheyev. Not going to trade Podkolzin. So there's nobody really left. And the Canucks are also in a situation where they only have really 2 players that they have to decide on. It's not like Danila Klimovich is pushing for a roster spot this year, or, they don't really have that AHL farm team built up that they have to make a trade right now. So if they run with Dickinson or Lockwood as their 13th forward, or even Hoglander as their 13th forward, and send Dickinson down to the minors, those are things that you can definitely do. You don't have to make a trade at the moment, but I think that as we get closer to the deadline, they might make a trade, especially if a defenseman comes back.
Yeah, that's I definitely agree with all that. They're going to have to free up cap space eventually with Horvat getting re-signed and all that. Yeah. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to talk about all this around the deadline, depending on where the Canucks are in the standings. But let's talk about that and how they match up in the Pacific Division, which is still pretty strong at the top with the Calgary Flames, Edmonton Oilers. But how do the forwards kind of match up in this division?
I think that the Canucks, they don't have the most skilled top 9, but they have the best top 9, if that makes sense. They have the most balanced top 9.
Yeah.
So you look at Edmonton. Edmonton's got McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Vander Kane, Jesse Puljujärvi, but they don't really have a strong built top 9. So they have strong players, but they don't have a top 9 that can match up. You look at LA is going to be an interesting team. I think that LA might have the most balanced team in the entire division, but we'll see how that goes. San Jose, I think we can throw them out for this year. I don't think many people are betting on San Jose this year. Vegas is interesting. They just got rid of Pacioretty. I'm not a huge fan of how they built their team. They have Mark Stone and Jack Eichel, but I don't really see much more that they have. Nolan Patrick injured. So that's that. Calgary is going to be interesting, but then again, they have a top line, but they don't really have the depth outside of that top line. You got Anaheim, who's going to be a fun team, but I don't think that their forwards are ready to make that playoff push. Mason McTavish is going to be great with Trevor Zegras, though, if they end up playing together. Who else do you have in that division? I think I covered everybody, did I?
Yeah.
You didn't cover the team you covered.
Yeah, the Kraken.
Oh yeah, the Seattle Kraken. The Seattle Kraken have a good top 9. Interesting to see what happens with Wenberg because he was not great last year. Interesting to see with Shane Wright. Do they keep him past the 9 games or do they even play him in the 9 games? I don't think Jared McCann's going to have as good of a year as he did because the shooting percentage was just like through the roof.
Yeah.
Matty Beniers, I mean, that's a guy that you're looking at who people have compared to like Jonathan Taves. But I don't know if they're going to be, I don't think they're going to push for a playoff spot this year. I think that this year is kind of like let's get the forward group together. We have them locked in for a while. Let's get everybody on the same page. And then next year they're going to make that push. But they have they're going to be like the Canucks in a couple years. Like once everybody gets to know each other better, we've seen the Canucks, it's taken them a couple years to really build up this top 9. So Seattle's kind of in that same boat. We'll see what happens with Yanni Gourde as well. Like that's a great third line center, but they're kind of building. They're still in that building process. They have the pieces there. Now it's about, can everybody work well together?
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, we've touched a ton on the Vancouver forwards because there are a ton of them. It might be the only team to have a true top 9 in the NHL right now, which is a good thing for the Canucks and their fans. But let's talk about defense. And one defenseman that needs no introduction, Quinn Hughes. I want to get your thoughts. How much more of a step does he or can he take this season after producing career high and record-breaking numbers last year?
I mean, how much do people want him to take a step? Like, what more can he do? This is a guy who set a franchise record for defensemen. Now, to be fair, the franchise record wasn't
that
high.
Good.
But like this is a guy who's close to a point per game.
Yeah.
Like he's a facilitator on the power play. He's a facilitator at 5-on-5. He now plays the penalty kill.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what more people want from him. Like he's, I guess he could break the 10 goal mark.
Yeah.
He could.
It's the only problem.
Could be a point per game player. I think really, if you're talking about Quinn Hughes taking a step forward, you're talking about him in the Norris candidacy.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way he takes a step forward.
I think you're absolutely right. That really can be the only way that he can.
Yeah. Like he's already, I know people debate this. He's a number 1 defenseman in the league. Like when we define that teams have number 1 defenseman, he's a number 1 defenseman on most teams. He's probably, maybe not on Colorado, maybe not on Tampa Bay, but like I'd say like 75% of the teams, he's a number 1 defenseman. Maybe not on Detroit with your Moritz Seider.
But even then though, because they play 2 different styles, like that would be a 1A, 1B type situation. Because you'd have your Luke Hughes who would drive the play, and then you have your Seider who would stay home more.
Yeah. It's like, look, it's from the opportunity I got to speak to Quinn Hughes this past year. He's a great guy. He's always going to try to like beat his own record. He's always going to try to do better. He's not a guy that likes to, sit there and just be average. He's always going to try to push. So if he, it's very possible that he gets close to that point per game or past that point per game this year. The Canucks are going to be a more offensively balanced team, and they're going to probably score more goals this year. So Quinn Hughes is probably going to get more points. That's kind of how the correlation works.
Yeah. I don't have to tell you how much I love Quinn Hughes because I literally jumped out of my chair when they drafted him. So it's I should have had a video on for reaction.
You did your best Jack Hughes impersonation when they drafted Quinn Hughes.
Never forget Jack Hughes riding in the limo with Quinn Hughes while wearing a Vancouver Canucks hat.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. But like you say, it's kind of hard to step forward from what he's done so far, but I still think there's a lot more in his game defensively because he made a big step forward last year in that. So he's just such a good defenseman. I just love watching him play. It's just going to be exciting what he can do again. Let's talk about a guy that has used to be really good offensively, but now he's kind of transitioned to more of maybe a two-way, more defensively oriented, I guess. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who I wish the Canucks would have got a few years ago, not now. But what are your expectations for him in his second season? There's been talk about him moving over to his offside to play because the Canucks don't have a lot of depth on that side. But what do you think about Ekman-Larsson?
I think you should just keep him on his side, play him, in that 18 to 20 minute mark, and just let him play defensively. Like, you don't need him to be on the second power play unit. That's going to be, in my mind, Jack Rathbone's spot. But one interesting thing to follow with Ekman-Larsson is that as the season went on, he saw less and less penalty kill time. Mm-hmm. Is that something like the coaching staff wasn't 100% happy with him? Maybe. Is that more like he just got tired? We'll see. Like this, he's a declining asset that they have for a long time. It's not ideal, but I think that if you can get, around that 30 points, like he did last year, he had 29. If you can get around that 30 points, that's a huge win. If he doesn't make too many mistakes, that's a huge win. But I think this idea that he's going to be the shutdown defenseman who plays 25 minutes a night, like that's not what he is anymore. And, if he is a player that the Vancouver Canucks somehow trade, that's not a bad thing either. Like, there's no, I feel like we have to really temper our expectations with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which is fine. Every team has a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson on their team, somebody who's overpaid, and, you shouldn't really expect much from him. If he plays well defensively, I'm fine with that, Yeah, you also got to separate the cap from the player sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't do. But yeah, it is what it is with Ekman-Larsson. I don't think there's really much more you can say about that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
All right, I want to get your thoughts on Luke Schenn. He is in a contract year this season. So what is his role going to be on this year's Canucks team?
So in case you didn't know, Luke Schenn's real name is Luke Big Daddy Schenn, because
I did not know that, Adam.
So Luke Schenn is like he's like the player that every team needs. Yeah. There was a video out there today where the Canucks did a contest and invited a bunch of kids out to do a skate in. Who's there taking photos with them is Luke Schenn. Yeah. Like, he's the perfect ambassador for the organization, and he does well. Like, he's found a second wind here in Vancouver. When he signed in Vancouver, or when the rumor happened, apparently, according to reports, Quinn Hughes texted him saying, "Are you back? I'm so excited." Like, you look at like him and Hughes, it shouldn't work, but it does. It's like he's found the fountain of youth. But he's one of these guys that if you go after Quinn Hughes, you're gonna have to go over after Luke Schenn.
Yeah.
Like, he scored a beautiful Bobby Orr type goal against the Ottawa Senators this year out of nowhere. But yeah, like, should he be partnered with Quinn Hughes? Probably not, but it just works. So it's not the worst thing in the world to have Luke Schenn there. If the Canucks are smart, they're going to re-sign him at the end of the year. But yeah, he's making less than $1 million. Like, why wouldn't you want that guy in your lineup? Yeah. And then if they find a guy to play the right side with Quinn Hughes, who's better, then you can just drop him down and he can mentor Jack Rathbone. Yeah. So he's kind of like the perfect player for this team right now.
Yeah. I agree. I think Luke Schenn gets very underrated, and I think he is one of those guys that just being around him, having him on your team and being around him to learn the ins and outs from is very, very invaluable that a lot of teams don't get.
Yeah. And I would appreciate when you guys do the Toronto Maple Leafs one to stop telling them, writing articles about how Canucks need to trade Luke Schenn back there.
Yeah.
It didn't work. Yes. Just leave it alone. Just keep our guy here.
Yes.
I'll let him know. Yeah, all right. No more Luke Schenn articles. All right. We've been told off.
All right. You mentioned Jack Rathbone, so let's talk about him. He started in the NHL last year, but got sent down and played in the AHL. had a really good season down there, and then got hurt towards the end of the season. But he's expected to be on the team because he signed a one-way contract. Does he become a full-time NHLer this year?
Yes, Jack Rathbone will be a full-time NHLer in my mind. He's going to be the third left shot defense. And then right now, if you look at partners, it's either going to be Travis Dermott or Tucker Poolman, depending on Poolman's health, which is a whole nother issue that the Canucks have to deal with. Apparently, he's okay.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. But Jack Rathbone is kind of the perfect player to play that left shot third pairing guy. He's an offensively driven player. I don't think you should give him second power play right off the bat, but I think he's going to end up there. Later on. Like, the Canucks need more offense from the blue line. He dominated in the AHL. There's also a situation where a player just shouldn't be going back to the AHL because they've learned everything. Like, once they start dominating the AHL, there's no point of putting them back there. Yeah. Because they've hit their peak.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to Jack Rathbone, the only option is to put him in the NHL. My only concern is that they're gonna, bring him up and play him as a seventh defenseman, which won't work. Like, I'd rather see Poolman or Dermott as a seventh defenseman and have Rathbone playing and, making one or two mistakes a game. Like, you don't learn from the bench or from the press box, you learn from on the ice. He makes mistakes, that's fine. All young players are going to do it. Quinn Hughes makes mistakes. Cale Makar makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Adam Fox makes mistakes. So I think that, you ease him into that role. If he's starting at 15 minutes a game, that's good. But I think that in the end, he's going to be on that second power play by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you mentioned potential moves. You mentioned the front office promising to bring in some upgrades to the defense, but there hasn't been a whole lot of that this season, or this offseason, I should say. So this can just be a real quick answer from you, but want to get your thoughts. Do you see anything else happening to this defensive core before the season starts?
Yes. Trader Jim, as he's called, Jim Rutherford is the GM. Something's going to happen. Whether it be before a training camp or closer to the deadline, something's going to happen.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah. Well, just for what it's worth, Patrick Allvin came today, who he said he likes the defense right now. So take that for what.
Yeah, but what is the GM going to say? No, I don't like my defense.
Yeah, right. Well, he did say that though when he came in. He did say he didn't like the defense.
It's like when they asked JT Miller, about signing a contract. Of course, he's going to say that he loves Vancouver and all of that stuff.
It looks like.
Of course, I don't have a problem with Brock Boeser.
Yeah, telling the truth. Okay, let's talk about how the defense matches up in the division. We talk about the forwards who look pretty strong. What does this core of defense look like compared to the rest of the division?
I think this core is problematic. You have I don't think there's any defenseman in the Pacific Division like Quinn Hughes. I think you can say Quinn Hughes is probably the top defenseman in the division. None of this Darnell Nurse stuff, none of this Noah Hannafin stuff, Shea Theodore. I think you can put Quinn Hughes probably at the top there.
Yeah.
As far as the rest of the team, I think you're probably looking at a little bit better than Seattle, who's probably the 6th or 5th team. Calgary's probably the top. Vegas is there. Los Angeles is a really good team. Defensively, they got a lot of prospects coming up. I don't know if they're going to hit this year, but definitely for sure. Anaheim's a team with a lot of good prospects. I know they're not getting Olin Zellweger this year, but that guy's going to be a player for sure. Yeah. And then you have the Sharks. Well, Vegas, you have Vegas who knows? Honestly, Vegas is just such a wild card in everything that nobody really knows what they're going to do this year. Yeah. I think the Sharks are kind of at the bottom. And then you have Vancouver and Seattle, but I do think Vancouver's a little bit ahead of Seattle. But Vegas, I don't know where to put Vegas. So they're close to the 3rd or 4th bottom of the division.
Right now, I think the only thing that, at least for me, looking at Vegas, their defense seems to be the only thing that's somewhat stable. Their forwards are still kind of up in the air. They lost some. They have some new ones coming in. It'll be interesting to see how they mesh together. And then the goaltending is just absolute chaos right now. So at least to me, looking at Vegas from this past year, that's the defense seems to be the most stable. But I think you're absolutely right. You never know, and that team has been having tons of injury problems the last few years, which will definitely throw a wrench into plans as well. All right, well, let's move on over to goaltenders. Talking about Thatcher Demko in his second season as the de facto starter for the Canucks. Will the team go only as far as he can take them? Or will this be a situation of them playing off each other very well?
I think that Thatcher Demko is going to have to be phenomenal again for the team because this defense is just not up to par yet. Like Demko got a Vezina vote last year. I think it was a 5th place vote. But if the Canucks make the playoffs, if the Canucks make the playoffs and if they have a really good year where they're not in the wild card, I think Demko is a top 3 Vezina finalist.
Yeah.
He's so good right now. When he wears his the black skate with the white pads, he looks almost unbeatable. So it's one of the he had the black skate jersey with the black pads.
Yeah. I've got him on my desktop right now.
Yeah. So I mean, when you put that in net, how can you score on it? Right. He's making saves without a glove, making saves without a helmet, and then he's got one of the best goaltending coaches in Ian Clark. So this team goes as far as Demko does. If Demko gets hurt, this team is done. You're not going to, I know that they've won games 7-6. They're not going to do that. They're not going to win games like that. Demko needs to be the star of this team for them to go far and even make the playoffs and have any chance of winning a round. Yeah.
I'd say right now they definitely made the right choice picking him over Markstrom at that point, even though Markstrom's done really well. Demko is, of course, younger, and he's under a ridiculous contract right now for what he does. Let's talk about his backup this year, though, and Spencer Martin, who is apparently the backup. They're talking about Colin Delia kind of being in there too, but no, I say Martin's the backup, unless, I don't know, whatever. But he had a stellar cup of coffee with the Canucks. Kind of had a string of games where he won a bunch. His goals against average was ridiculous and like that. But is he going to be able to spell Demko enough to rest him so that he's not tired at the end of the year? Because he did look very tired in that stretch at the end. Does he start enough games and play well enough to actually be in that conversation?
Well, ideally, you want your backup playing in that 25 to 30 games range. First off, Spencer Martin is going to be the backup unless he just absolutely forgets how to play hockey. I think that, he's won the confidence of Bruce Boudreau. I was at that Florida game where he just held them in the game until the shootout. That was phenomenal. I think there was a game where he either hit 50 saves or was close to it versus the Oilers.
Lost in the shootout.
That was the overtime game where it's the winner was McDavid from Draisaitl. How are you gonna this is a guy who I think that he can handle 25 games, but we don't know. He's never done it before. He's done it in the AHL, but we don't know if he can do it in the NHL with the competition higher. I think that having the confidence of Ian Clark is going to help a lot. Having a full season or a full off season where you're the backup is going to help. And remember, this is a guy who comes over from the Tampa Bay organization.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of pedigree here. Tampa Bay, even in their farm system, they don't just bring in guys just for the sake of bringing in guys. They're bringing in talented guys. It's one of the smarter moves that the Canucks made. But we'll see. He has to be able to play minimum 25 games. That's the question. You can't have Demko playing over 60 games this year. As for Colin Delia, I mean, if there's an injury, he can maybe play 5 games. We saw that he's not really a a reliable NHL goaltender. And if, something doesn't work out with Martin and you're close to the trade deadline, you can always make that move for an additional goaltender if you need to. Like, I know that the Canucks weren't able to get rid of Jaro Halak last year, but other teams seem to be able to trade backup goaltenders or acquire them through waivers pretty easily.
Yeah,
that's very true. All right, so talking about comparing to other teams in the Pacific, you had the forwards around the middle to top of the pack. You had the defense around the bottom of the pack. Where do you see this goaltending matching up with other teams in their division?
This goaltending is probably in the top two. So you have Calgary at number 1 or Vancouver at number 1. I think it's kind of a toss-up because we have to see what I think it's Dan Vladar.
Vladar,
back up there. I really like Wolf, and I think that he should be the backup, but that probably won't happen. LA, they still running with Jonathan Quick and Calvin Peterson, so we'll see how that goes. Quick took over the starting role. Anaheim, John Gibson is always what's going to happen. He can be the best goalie in the NHL, or he can just fall off.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you have who knows what's going to happen with Grubauer and Martin Jones, 2 goalies that are coming off of just bad seasons. Where else? You got San Jose, where they have 9 goalies signed. Nobody knows who's starting there.
And then you got Campbell up in
Edmonton.
Yeah, Campbell. I'll put him in like the 4th spot there.
Okay.
I don't like Stuart Skinner. I like, but I don't know what their backup situation is there. I think Stuart Skinner is a good backup. And I think Stuart Skinner, they should have signed a goalie for 2 years and then promoted Skinner to the starter. But that's a whole nother thing. And then you have Vegas, which is just, exactly. The Aiden Hill show, maybe. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, we'll see how that kind of plays out. But I agree. I think Demko and Martin are probably more towards the top of the division for sure.
Yeah.
All right. We got to talk about the coach because he's in his first full season as the Canucks head coach, Bruce Boudreau, who basically became a fan favorite in the first few weeks he was there. And everyone knows the chant, Bruce, there it is. And it's probably going to continue this year. So we're going to see more of that, or we're going to start seeing the hate going on to the head coach, which usually happens here.
Well, based off of Bruce Boudreau's career, he has this kind of like 5-year window. So I think that, next year they're going to take a step up. I think that the Canucks are going to make the playoffs and Bruce Boudreau is going to be a big part of it. But the players seem to love him. The fans love him. With the skate today with the kids, he announced all of their names. We saw how excited he got when he saw Kevin Owens at the draft. He turned into a child at the table and was talking to Kevin Owens and wouldn't let him go back to his seat. This is a guy that it would be very hard for Canuck fans to turn on.
Yeah.
Especially after what happened last year.
Yeah.
He put them in a playoff run that they didn't deserve to be in. You can talk, they missed the playoffs. He made him one of the best teams in the league over the final, 50 games of the year. Yeah. And that was with injuries to Horvat, with injuries to, Demko was tired. He had, this team was depleted. Yeah. And he got JT Miller to score 100 points. He reinvented Brock Boeser's game. Brock Boeser was on an awful start under Travis Green. Brock Boeser ended up leading the team in power play shots by the end of the season.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic coach. Yeah. He's going to really help this team. And I think that unless the Canucks go out to they lose 20 of their first 25 games, it's going to be really hard for them to turn on Boudreau.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
And he's always been one of those guys that no matter where he goes, the fans love him, and he's a player's coach, and he's got their back. So I don't see it being a Travis Green situation, at least not this season. But I think you're right, Adam. If that window starts to close in the next 2 or 3 years, it could turn ugly real fast. All right, let's move over to our quick fire segment. This is where Matt and I are going to rifle off questions at you. You're going to do your best Thatcher Demko, making saves left and right. But I want you to just answer us in about 1 to 3 sentences. You can be as quick as you want. We'll give you a chance to explain anywhere you want. But this is just going to be a real quick fire round. So let's kick it off. What's the biggest storyline or question mark going into 2022-23 for the Vancouver Canucks?
How will Tyler Myers play?
Yes. That's a good one.
You know, there's so much expectation. He's got to step up this year. He played well last year, but you probably expect more from him coming this season.
Yeah,
agreed. 1 or 2 breakout stars.
I think Curtis Lazar is going to have a career year. I'm very high on him. And I also think that Tanner Pearson is going to have a really good year this year. But he's going to have a very quiet year. But at the end of the year, we'll look back and be like, how did he get close to 45 points?
Yeah.
Wow, I like that. All right. Who's one player that needs a big bounce back from last season?
I think the same answer. It's Tyler Myers. You know, he has to be this offensively driven force. He's got to be a physical force. He's got to be better on the defense. So this is a guy who there will be a lot of eyes on, especially because he is the highest paid right shot defenseman on this team.
Yeah. All right. And a player that could be an X factor this season.
I think it's going to be Vasily Podkolzin, because I think he's going to be put into a lot of great situations, and it's, will he step up to the plate, or is he not developed enough to step up to the plate yet?
Nice.
Yeah. Predict one rookie or prospect that will surprise fans and make the roster out of training camp.
Now, does Kuzmenko count? Because technically he's a rookie, and I think that's a guy who's really going to surprise a lot of people this year.
I'll count it.
I could count it, but I don't know if he's a surprise that everyone's expecting to make the roster. I think it's a surprise if he doesn't. But no, that's a good one. He is a rookie.
I like it.
Okay, we'll go with Jack Rathbone. How about that?
There we go.
That's a little bit better.
Dude, there you go. That could be, because we don't know. All right. What other players should fans be watching? We have not mentioned yet. We've mentioned almost everyone on the Canucks.
I'm pretty sure we mentioned everyone.
Who I mean, there's 2 players that we have to really pay attention to, and that's Travis Dermott and Tucker Poolman. Yeah. That to me is the battle for the last position on this team. It's that last right shot position. I think that Dermott has the upper hand, but Patrick Allvin did say that they are big fans of Tucker Poolman. We don't know based off his health, because he did have those migraine problems near the end of the year. Yeah. By the report today, he's okay. But he really needs to live up to his contract. You know, he's here for another 3 years. He's got to step up this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Who will lead the team in scoring for forwards?
I think that this year is going to be the year of Elias Pettersson. I think he's going to take that step up and outpoint JT Miller.
I love it. Love it. And who will lead the team in scoring for defense?
Easy one.
I don't know. Maybe the franchise leader in points for a season.
That's the easy one, Quinn.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty easy. I don't even know why I asked.
All right, one player that can be traded before the deadline.
I think the big name that people need to watch is Connor Garland. That seems to have the most value, and he has no trade protection, as far as we know. Now, it could be a Tyler Myers situation where he does, and nobody knows about it. But I think that that's a guy who would garner a lot of interest, especially if he has a strong start to the season.
Yeah.
All right. Do your best prediction of the future. Where will the Canucks finish in the standings, and do they make the playoffs?
I think they make the playoffs. I'm debating whether or not they make the playoff as a wild card or as that 3rd seed. I don't think they're going to be a top 2 in the division, but I think they're either going to be a wild card or that 3rd seed in the Pacific Division.
All right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think they're probably going to be flirting with that. I'm hoping that it's more, but I think that's a more realistic one. Okay, let's finish this off with one bold prediction or a hot take for the 2022-23 season.
I'm gonna go. Well, this one is kind of tough because it's like, you don't want to seem like an Uber fan being like, oh, my guy's going to score 200 points. But I think that the Canucks are going to have 4 players above a point per game. And when I mean that, I mean the over 82 points this year. I see it as the top 3 centers are all going to hit above a point per game. So Horvat, Miller, Pettersson, and then I also see Hughes hitting that point per game level this year.
Well, they're going to be this season's Calgary Flames, huh? With like three players creeping around 100 points.
Yeah, just you look at how their power play was at the end of the season, and it's hard to argue that they're not just going to be better. Like they have a whole season with Bruce Boudreau now. They got more offensive weapons. Quinn Hughes is a year older, better. Elias Pettersson is a year better. Brock Boeser doesn't have to deal with trade speculation.
Yeah.
Miller doesn't have to deal with trade speculation. It's just, it all looks like it's culminating in like this offensive, that this team is just going to explode offensively.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. I like that bold prediction too. So that will be, that'll be a fun one to watch.
Okay, let's get to the last part before we let you go, Adam. Thanks for joining us on this show and talking Canucks. We've talked quite a bit, so everyone's going to love this episode, I'm sure. So, an article of the day, and it can be your own, but from the Canucks writing team, or your own for an article of the day.
Well, let's go from the Canucks article team. This guy named Matthew Zator. 3 reasons the Canucks will make the playoffs in 2022-23. Touched on some of the stuff that we talked on today, the 3-headed center monster that's going down. Now, you do have Tanner Pearson on your 4th line, so I'll forgive you for that. But yeah, we're pretty close on the lines. To an extent, we kind of have an idea of who's going to be in the top 9. Thatcher Demko, we talked about him. He's probably the biggest. Yeah. The Canucks make the playoffs. It's going to be on his back. He's going to drag him kicking and screaming. And of course, the best PR move the Canucks ever made, hiring Bruce Boudreau. Yeah. Like how, the players want to play for him. Yeah. You can tell. So I think that this is just the perfect storm that the Canucks are finally going to, not just make the playoffs. They're going to have a home playoff date for the first time since I think it was the 2014 playoff?
2015
playoff. So we're talking 8 years that they haven't had a playoff game at Rogers Arena in Vancouver.
It was Bo Horvat's rookie season.
Yeah, don't talk to me about the bubble and all that type of stuff. They didn't have any home games there. Aquilini didn't make any revenue. They're going all in, and it's going to be an exciting year for the Canucks.
All right, thanks for the shout out of the article. I thought writing that article was going to create a bit of talk, and it did. So we'll see what happens. It seems like the fan base is pretty positive going in, and there was that split down the middle when Miller was signed. If everyone was kind of angry about the signing, that they should have traded him, but that's all Canucks Twitter stuff like that. So thanks, Adam, for joining us on another preview show here at the Hockey Writers Podcast. Make sure you're following Adam's work on Canucks coverage, Seattle Kraken coverage. He does both, and all the articles on the Canucks writing team, which includes myself and Sartaj Buhar. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. He's going to be the Canucks credential writer this year, and he'll be doing stuff at Rogers Arena if he can get in there. So look for his articles as well. And check out the Morning Skate, morningskate.io. That's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right now. It switches back in the regular season to Monday to Friday. So check all that stuff out. And we will see you next time on another preview show here on YouTube here.